Shaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, friend, guide, and teacher, Swami Kriyananda Ji. We humbly bow before you all. Divine Mother, help us to see all obstacles in our lives as perfect opportunities to help us attain spiritual freedom. Help us to greet all problems with great enthusiasm, with great energy, and by seeing you behind all of it. We feel your love. We know that all that you bring us is for our own higher good. Help us to move beyond all egoic preoccupation into your light, into your love, into your perfect joy. Om Shanti. Amen. Okay. Viveka Devi, I just wondered if you could do something. This is from Swamiji. So we're doing part 2 tonight of the, I don't have the reading. We'll have to look it up. Somebody will have to look it up on the phone for me. Ellen, do you have the book? I'm only not standing because I'm tethered here. So we're doing the second half of the class, The Secret of Prosperity. No. No, we have it, just we were on day 17, and that's not right. I think it was day 7, but let me get it here. Yeah, day 7, we started 2 weeks ago. And when we started the class then, some of you were not here, we started in a much deeper and more fundamental way than I had planned. So we talked about almost everything that I didn't plan to talk about, but we spoke about Patanjali exclusively. Now, the secret of prosperity is looking behind the obstacles you face in life to the opportunities they represent. Looking beyond the obstacles we face in life to the opportunities they represent. And actually that class, I felt it was a very profound class, because this can be very simple, which is how I ended the class last time. Not simple, but we can think of it in everyday life, and we might do actually a little more of that tonight. But when we started with Patanjali, and we were talking about what Patanjali listed as the obstacles that turned out to be disease, dullness, doubt, carelessness, laziness, there's more, sensuality, false perceptions. I'm not going to read them all again right now, but they're not as obvious as somebody's not treating you well in the world, or even something serious like you lost your job, or somebody who you thought was a friend betrayed you. The things that are just more overt and obvious, if they were so subtle when you take it to that level of the teachings of the sutras. The sutras are complex. I mean, once you get them, you get them. But I remember when Swamiji wrote that, what's it called? It was like Patanjali Explained. I don't know what the title of the book is, But he wrote his book on Patanjali like he writes a book on so much. And almost everybody I knew on this path was thrilled when that book came out, because none of us knew what Patanjali was talking about. I mean, now a lot of it looks easier, but when you just read, as soon as you get beyond the third or fourth sutra, even with the first sutra, right, that says, and now we come to the study of yoga, who of us knew really what that meant? And how many chapters did Swamiji and Master write on the word now? I mean, it's just remarkable, this is what I'm saying. You just go deeper and deeper. So when that book came out and we could actually read Swamiji's interpretation of it and understand what Patanjali was saying, because I'm saying we all, because it really was, I'm seeing some of you look at me as if like, oh, I knew, maybe you did, but nobody I knew did. But suddenly, and we knew it was important. We always knew that Patanjali was very important. We knew who he was, but we couldn't understand his language. And then Swamiji wrote that book, and then it was like, oh, now I see it. And we could read it and study through the whole sutras and have them make perfect sense. But when I went back last 2 weeks ago and took off from that point of all of these, what Patanjali says, through meditation on the inner sound of Om, one gains the power to overcome all obstacles and to realize his oneness with the inner self. That's beautiful. That's fairly obvious. I mean, it's understandable. I don't know how many of us could do that, but it's understandable. But then in the next sutra, he lists those obstacles, and we just wouldn't have thought of dullness as an obstacle. It wouldn't have come up. Carelessness, laziness we might have. But anyway, all by way of saying, it's a perfect way of looking at how subtle this spiritual path is. And honestly, why it takes us 10 million lifetimes to get right to here. Because when you say that to yourself, can I overcome all disease, all dullness, all doubt, all carelessness, all laziness, all sensuality, all false perceptions, missing the point? What does that mean, missing the? I know, but this is what he lists. Instability and backsliding. He says, I said this last week, but I'm repeating it just to bring us to where we are. He says, those are the obstacles, but then the next sutra says, accompanying the obstacles, what accompanies them is moodiness, despair, nervous agitation, and agitated breathing. So he's saying, when those obstacles reside in our astral spine, which of course some of them do for all of us, what does that create in us? How does that look? It looks like moodiness, despair, nervous agitation, irregular breathing. So there's so much to overcome, really, but I'm saying it because those are the real obstacles. That's the essence of the obstacles, not what we think of usually as obstacles in life. That's how they live in us and how they follow us for so long. Okay, having said that now, I'll just read you the next sutra, which I didn't read last week, but it's important. The practice of one-pointed concentration is the best way to rise above both the obstacles and the physical and mental disturbance that accompany them. So he says, focus your attention and you'll be able to. That is the best way to rise above it. nothing we don't know, but I'm just saying it in Patanjali's language. Now, the reason I just was telling Viveka Devi about 5 or 10 minutes ago to get ready is because the cobra pose, or Bhujangasana, right? Okay. The affirmation, I don't know if it's our affirmation, but wherever I pulled it from, I don't know. I rise determinedly to meet all obstacles. Is that our affirmation that goes with it? Or, yeah, James is going to put it on for you. There you go.
Okay, that is the original affirmation. I rise determinedly to
meet all
obstacles. Yeah, and then it was changed to I rise joyfully to meet each new opportunity,
right.
Which means the same thing.
Yeah.
But I always kind of appreciated that original one.
Yeah, I didn't know it was the original one. Wherever I pulled it out from, I was actually going to have you lead us in a pose, but now I realize it's the cobra pose. It won't be good to do here. Okay, let's all get down on the ground. So you're off the hook. Except it's wonderful to know that how Swamiji switched that from focusing on the obstacle. He changed the affirmation. I didn't know that till you said it. I was wondering why he said, because I just pulled it out, copied and pasted it. Now I have no idea where I got it, so I couldn't go back. To I rise joyfully to meet each new opportunity. They're very different. James is turning you off.
Okay.
Because the first one would seem to have to do exactly with Patanjali's,
What he's saying. Yeah. So Amajoti's saying that the way he had it the first time, I rise determinedly to meet all obstacles, does sound like Patanjali. I rise joyfully to meet each new opportunity, sounds like Swamiji. Same thing, but very much like we were facing a couple of weeks ago, the difference in the way Christ had to say everything that we tried to exemplify on Good Friday here. Here's the station. Here's what all of the Catholics were saying. Here's how we say it in the language of self-realization. And I think this is a similar thing too. Very interesting.
Demystifying Patanjali.
Demystifying, thank you. Yeah, which is such a perfect, because it did that. It's such a perfect title. It did demystify it for many of us. Yeah, not completely, if I'm honest. I'm not completely demystified, but somewhere. Okay, well, we thought what we would do that would be a lot of fun tonight, instead of having outside music, is before I talk, and then hopefully we all talk a little bit, is that we're going to stand up and remember we're greeting obstacles in a different way, and we're going to all sing together the song, Move All Ye Mountains. And I think most people know the words, but the words are, move all ye mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my progress. It's a beautiful song. It's gotten to be known as a children's song, and they do it a lot in Living Wisdom School. But it's really not at all just a children's song. And when we just recorded this, we just sort of pulled people in off the street, so to speak. Aryavan was trying to go home from work. I forget who else. We just dragged people in. James, he had never seen it or heard it. And we put them up on the dais and recorded it for a talk that I was recording for the village. I don't even remember what the talk was about, but it must have been about challenges or something. Something like that. Anyway, so it was powerful. The title was made up by Narayan, who could have written this song. He's like this. So anyway, there's hand motions to this. Move all ye mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my progress. Come here, Jyoti, if you know it. Rita, do you know it? Do you remember it?
I don't know it if I
Yeah. Yeah, you start this way. So you start with a march and follow us at first, and then we'll sing it through a few times. Okay. Move all ye mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my Repeat it again. Move all ye mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my progress. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Move all ye mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my progress. Move all ye mountains that stand my way. Nothing can stop my progress. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Yay! I hope whoever is online was doing that. You know, this is just a funny, totally aside story, but if any of you have ever had a neurologic exam done, when you test the cranial nerves, which are these 12 nerves that do everything from our brain in our face, you know, they allow us to smile, to clench our eyes, to stick out. So you're there, you're a professional person, a doctor with a stethoscope, and you're saying to somebody, okay, stick out, and you do it for them so that they know what to do. Stick out your tongue, wiggle it side to side, blow up your cheeks, you know, like, and that's the point. It's so stupid, it looks so silly. So when we used to teach the superconscious living exercises, many people in this room have done this. The first time you teach them to somebody, they're so embarrassed to do them. So I always used to say, look, this is what I had to go through as a doctor, and I would do this neurologic exam. Now that song, though, is not that silly. If you do it with energy, you start feeling, you know, exactly what it is. And when you slash that, slash with the sword, and you know, Kamala Devi, you all know her, she's not here, so I can tell a tale on her. She is such a sweet affect. It's just, she's so sweet. So when we went to Australia, I had to say to her, maybe many of you heard this when we did the satsang, I said to her, you know, you're so used to speaking to people and you're trying to calm them as you lead them through these, like, take a deep yogic breath, let it all out. You're getting them ready for meditation. But now we were walking into these hospitals and we were teaching classes to nurses and other, you know, people who, like, it's their lunch hour. They were just waiting to go to sleep. So the night before, I said to her, no, energy now. You say, take a deep breath, and you have to talk faster than you talk, and louder, and you have to be. So I said to her, practice tonight. And she's never like that. It was like saying to anybody, just change yourself overnight. This isn't so far off topic now that I think of it. But she actually did a brilliant job. She got up there, she spoke loud, she was present, she moved much more quickly. Otherwise, you know, you could fall asleep between her words sometimes. It's like, what is the end of this sentence? It's not that she's off, she's beautiful. But, you know, most of us move at a different pace. And she actually really got it. Now, why was I going to tell you about her? Oh, because she was up here when we recorded it. She was one of the people. And she lapsed into slashing so beautifully. And the sword was so gorgeous. And I said, this is not a sweet song. We're getting rid of obstacles here. We are slashing every bramble with a sword. And I had to say, I didn't point her out because she would have been embarrassed, but I was like saying to everybody, no, this isn't sweet. It's not what it is. It's powerful. And it's exactly the power that's necessary. It's funny, isn't it? We know each other so well. I can be meditating in a room, and I know exactly who's walking in. I know who's coughing. We've been together a long time here. But it's exactly the energy and the effort that we need to overcome these obstacles. And where we ended 2 weeks ago, that's really worth repeating, is very often in his teachings, Swamiji says, the sooner you see an obstacle, whatever it is, anything that's bothering you, if you can raise your energy and change it right then, as soon as it comes. So if some crisis, or tragedy happens, and you wait a couple of weeks, and then you get over it, let's say, I'm just using English slang right now, but you get beyond it, you make spiritual progress, but you make much less progress than if you grab a hold of your energy and slash it right when it's the hardest, at its peak, that it's so much better to meet our problems, really, is what they are, to meet them there. So the longer that we wait, the longer we look at it, analyze it, wait for things to get better. I remember one time, this is years and years ago, I've told this story many times. I had just moved into the place that I'm living in now. Many of you have been there, Iris. It's a very nice townhouse. And it's nicer just because Carol Redmond put a lot of money into it, pushed out walls, put windows in, built a big kitchen. At that time, nobody else in the community had that. And I had just moved in. It was my 5th move in 2 years in the community. And you think you're just moving from one apartment to the next, but it's not like that. Every apartment's different. A lot of your stuff doesn't work. You wind up having to buy new things. I mean, it's like a regular old move. And I had come from literally a 10,000 square foot home in Maryland. So I had a lot of stuff. I had let a lot of it go, but I did. I wouldn't even take it off the truck when they moved it. I said to the guy, take it home. He said, you're kidding me. I said, nope, I've never been more serious. I want that piece, that piece, that piece. And he says, there's boxes here. Take it. I just was so tired of having stuff. It was an interesting feeling. But anyway, I made 5 moves in my first 2 years there. Now I was in Iris, this very nice condo. And I was not even totally unpacked when the couple that owned the house, they didn't own the house, but they owned some property in the community which gave them, they were entitled to that condo. And we had this like gentleman's agreement. We didn't sign anything. I said to them, no matter what happens, you're not going to ask me to move in less than 2 years, right? Right, they said, right. But they come back in 4 months. Now, I hear one day, I'm making dinner in Master's Kitchen. Chinnambar said, so how do you feel about moving again? I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, you know, Cindy and Andre are coming back. Cindy and Andre were these 2 ballet dancers. A lot of us remember them. Anyway, I didn't deal with it very well at all. I really got not just down, but I got angry. I felt betrayed by them, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm at home the next day, I think, and Asha came over. And she was going to tell, now, Shanti, this isn't a big deal. It's just an apartment. It's just a move. Why are you attached to it? This is what was going on in this. But I was in my peak of the idea of packing all that up again and moving. And it was just beyond me. And I said to her, you know I know that, Asha. And she would say something else. You know I already know that, Asha. I did. I knew it all. She wasn't telling me. I finally said to her, you're not telling me anything I don't know. If I could live that right now, I would. And I've told her this story, so she knows. She just didn't stop. And finally, I said to her, I've been in the community 2 years. Asha, I'd like you to leave my house. She said, what? I said, I want you to leave. I said, this is just maddening. But I said to her, here's the thing, and this is why this story came up. I said, I cannot stand to hear myself whining. I can't stand it. In 2 days, I'll be over it. But right now, I can't. And no matter what you say to me, it isn't going to help. But in 2 days, that's it. I'll never talk about it again. Which was, actually, it was true. I got totally ready, totally at peace, and then they didn't want the house back. Hence, we can all still keep meeting there. But, you know, it was like, how long are we going to wallow in? Now, I would have loved to have been the person who could just hear Chidambar say to me, how do you feel about moving again? No problem. You know, I would love to have been that person. I would still like to be that person, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm any closer. You know, these things are hard. I mean, when we think about the obstacles that we face in life, they're exactly the obstacle that's not easy for us. And many people have heard me say this. We look at each other, and with all the love in the world, we want to say, but honey, just don't do that, or just take it this way, or handle it that way. Because it's not a vritti stuck in our spine. It just looks so easy when it's not your karma. When it's your karma, and seriously now, one that's been getting a deeper and deeper hold over every lifetime. Every lifetime that we don't overcome it, it just grabs on stronger. So now, as highly evolved souls, as we all are here, that karma that we need to overcome, those vrittis, they're tough. They've been around a long time, and this final haul towards the end is very challenging. And I think we all know the way, everybody in this room and all of you online, I know it. We know these truths. We know them, like I was saying to Asha, I know that, but I didn't know it. I just, intellectually, I knew it. It's very different than to be able to look and say, you know what? I would never be attached to a house. House can come, a house can go, you know. And so what if I have to pack up again? You know, I can even look in hindsight and say, it could be very easy. It could have been easy, but it wasn't. And we're not given most things that are easy. I feel like every once in a while, Master lets me have a break. I feel this a lot. Like something hard happens and I don't get it all riled up. I actually just glide through it. And then you think, that's what it could all feel like. You know, that's it. But the next day or the next hour or minute, there's something there that's not so easy because it's exactly what we need to grow. And the more that we can remember that, really remember it deep inside, that there's never a mistake, never. And, you know, I've been embarrassing Rita because, or speaking about her, I don't know if she's embarrassed, but, you know, she had this really bad accident. She's walking across the street, hit by a car, goes down. I mean, fractures a clavicle, shatters her pelvis, or multiple fractures, sounds like. It was a bad break, and that's it. In a heartbeat, your life changes. But watching her in the hospital, and as she came home, she was in a state of complete and total acceptance, complete. And there was joy radiating from her. And when I visited her not that long ago, we were joking, playing, but not really joking and playing. And we said, getting back into regular old life, that's the next test. Might be harder than having been hit by the car, because all of a sudden, everything's there again. Now, we're not talking about Rita, but anybody, you know. In moments, it's easy. No matter what happens, great spiritual progress is made. No matter what. The way she greeted that accident, you know, I mean, we joke, how else can we determine things? Maybe it was 1,000 lives or something of karma. Then I said to her, a couple of people have heard me say this, I said, it's amazing. This was like day 3 no, maybe not day 3, but soon after that. Maybe it was day 3 in the hospital. I said to her, it's incredible that you could remember Stephen's number and tell that woman to call him. I mean, to just have such presence of mind. She said to me, oh, but that wasn't the first call I made. I said, what was the first call? She said, Master. That's what we have to practice. I called Master first. Then I said, call Stephen. Then I got practical. Okay, let's see, where are we here? Does anybody have any comments or questions? James? Oh, James, yeah. The sound man is away from the soundboard. Oh, go ahead. You're on.
You see it on? It's all, there we go. I was already thinking this, but your story talking about Rita kind of matches this. You said earlier, I don't remember exactly how you said it, but when you catch it, snip that energy. Sometimes when there's big things, that some big obstacle, and what I felt with Rita is raising our energy. But sometimes the small things like, you know, the driver on El Camino cut me off. That sets me off.
Yeah.
And it's snipping the energy that's going out and it's channeling it inward. And the more that we can try and send that energy, exactly, Rita, what you did, the more successful that we're going to be at that. So I was just noting that.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I also have had experiences now. It's a version of that, but that's very true. Thank you for bringing it up. Is that if we genuinely practice something, whatever it is that we feel we need to do, like maybe not just simply telling ourselves, I am not going to get irritated when I'm driving, ever. Now, for most of us, that's probably not true. Something happens, but if every time it happens, we immediately pull ourselves back. So with practice, soon, we no longer need to practice. Our reality is that we're in the center, at least in that situation. And we really don't get irritated, and it can happen in human interactions with somebody that irritates you or upsets you. You just practice. And sometimes they're little things, and sometimes they're big things, you know, but with practice, I'm sharing my experiences with you, not because they're so special or wonderful, but so that they'll trigger in all of us the next time or a way or something that we can all be grateful for. There's been an issue that I've been facing for years that has really been challenging to me, an interpersonal experience that has not been easy. And I've been talking to myself about it so much over the last few years that sometimes I think I'm crazy. I'm just like, don't do that, don't go there, why does it bother you? Constant, really trying to hold it in a different way. And I've never given up, even though I have not been able to nip it, as you say, and draw it in. But always the effort was there. And the further along the years went, the less room I gave myself for, at first it was sort of, well, who wouldn't be irritated with this? Maybe some of you can relate to that argument. Anybody would be upset by that. It's absurd. Of course they wouldn't, but it's a nice excuse. But I never quit practicing, and as the years went by more and more, I just held it as my problem. And then Easter week, which for me this year, I don't know why, maybe because we were so involved in the program for the first time, because Asha's always done the Easter week programs, but this year she didn't. A few of us did. I really felt grace descend directly from Christ. I felt it, I felt, and it was exactly, it sounds so mundane, but it was exactly in and around that thing I'd been working on for years. And suddenly, by the end of the week, I would say by the end of that Good Friday program, I don't know how many of you saw it or who was here. If you didn't, it's worth watching. It was transforming for many, many people. That issue was gone. It was like, where is that? Like, it was so real. But it's like waking up from a dream. But this is years of it. The dream felt so real, and then you wake up and you realize it was a dream. I felt like I was in a dream for all that time. And I don't think it would have happened if I wasn't practicing, and failing, very often failing, but not giving up, really believing that it could be healed in God's light and love, that it really was just what we're talking about. Can that big of an obstacle become the perfect opportunity? And I just felt like Christ was saying, you see, and so it wasn't, I was putting out energy, but I was not succeeding. But still, I worked on it. But I just felt he took it, because there's no other way to describe it. It quit that slow rise towards freedom. It was like very slow, right? Very slow. And then, I don't know if anybody can relate to that, but
Very inspiring.
yeah, because it was a hard, yeah, everybody, I would say everybody, but probably most people either are or have been working on something that's huge and that has you. It just has you. And it's inspiring, and it's also so deeply touching how much we are loved by God and how much that super consciousness wants us to be in it and a part of it. And it was just, it's hard to describe, but it is truly beyond words. But it was the culmination of the realization of so many of these teachings. When we get to that place, when we have the energy high enough that God can actually grab us from there. So he's not coming down to where we are, but if we get up high enough and we're sincere enough, just sincere enough, I failed. I really did fail too, and many times in a big way, like it wasn't pretty. You have to face yourself and go, did I just say that or think that or do that? So impossible to imagine that somebody who is so sincere on the path could be so stuck, but then instantly unstuck. Stephen. Yeah. Oh.
You know, I've been thinking about these things for a while now, and I've noticed something in the last few years with myself, and more particularly in recent months, because this idea of raising one's energy is so essential, and of course the idea of concentrating makes sense because then the energy follows the concentration. But in working with Master, working with God, which I do every day, I have found such kindness in response to what I sometimes consider to be my very feeble efforts. And what I've noticed is that though they may seem feeble to me, and in the grand scheme of things, they're certainly not as good as they could be, I just find that when I'm really sincere and that when I'm willing to correct myself in a variety of areas, the main areas that I'm working with get taken care of, even though I'm not doing the greatest job. Yeah. And I've just seen it so many times now, and I often think of this in terms of my business and money and the flow of money and all of that, which for some of us is an issue. And it's just been fascinating to me. And I've said this and I can still say it, and I'm presuming that I will continue to say it. I can't think of one time that Master has let me down. Yeah. I mean, not once. And it's, that's quite a track record. Where seemingly this, that, and the other could have happened, but it didn't. And recently, it was so strange that I was looking at a particular financial situation, and it just got remedied in ways that I could never conceive of. It was so out of left field. It was so beyond my sort of, I guess, field of vision is really what I'm thinking of, right? I could anticipate certain things that would have done it, all having to do with me doing more. Those were things like, the only way this is going to happen is if I do more.
Right.
And yet, I don't know why. It's some type of karma. I think, and I'm not going to go on forever with this, but I just, one conclusion is that each of us have lessons that are so different from one another. And I think what matters most is that you just open your heart and really want to do better and really connect every day with God even in ways that seem feeble or less than stellar meditations and all of that. But if it's just this continual willingness and openness, then that does something. And what results from that something is so impressive.
Thank you for sharing that, because first of all, it's so uplifting to hear these experiences, but so important what you just said. It's a conversation I was having with a woman this morning. She doesn't live here, but I speak with her at least once a month. She's always trying to figure out how to fix her life. And she's very smart and diligent, and so her thinking could do some good. But now I've known her for about a year and a half. She just called me out of the blue. She lives out of town, just looking for some spiritual guidance about things. Anyway, we've stayed in touch all this time. And she was saying to me this morning, I don't know what's going to come. I'm going to do this program. I'm working on this. And I'm doing it, but I just can't see where it's going. And it came to me, I think, very much like what you're saying. And I said to her, you don't need to see where it's going. All you need to do is be putting forth that effort. Be sincere. I mean, when you were speaking, the word sincerity came to mind right before you said it. I think that matters more than anything, because what you're saying that is right is that our field of vision is, of course you know it's right, but I'm agreeing with you. Let me just say that correctly. It's so it's not even just minuscule, it's meaningless. Our minds are meaningless compared to what God has in store for us, and we can't know it. All we can know is how to develop trust and faith and courage and kind of stick-to-itiveness, which is so meaningful. And then, I mean, God really does watch the heart. He really does. And attunement. Yeah, well, it takes a very long time to develop attunement. That's what I've come to realize. We're always deepening it, but to constantly be putting out that effort to deepen our attunement. Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah. The interest in, I'm just repeating what you're saying, so it's there, but yeah, the interest in attunement. I just finished reading a book today that was written by Darshan from Italy. I don't know how many of you know him. Really, I've always enjoyed him, but I had no idea who he was. He had written to me and asked me if I would write not a foreword, but it's not called a commentary. Testimonial, thank you, on his book. I said yes, but I never got to it. Now the book's published. But he told me the testimonial will go up online and it's still worthwhile. So I just started reading the book yesterday morning, finally, but I finished it. Such an extraordinary book on Sri Yukteswar's scientific, not the eight, but the eight meannesses he talks about. But what's the name of the book? The Holy Science. Thank you, I couldn't hear it. Which is a book, as Swami Kriyananda says, literally, this is a quote from Swami Kriyananda, nobody understands that book. That's what he said. That's another one like Patanjali, very hard to get to. Even Master said, who was telling me this today? Sai Ganesh, that even Master said, I myself do not feel I can understand everything Sri Yukteswar was saying. So deep is the wisdom. Now, I know Master didn't really mean that, but whatever, he was letting a lot of us off the hook, I think, or he wanted us to feel like he was keeping us company. Very hard book. I've tried to pick it up many times. But why I'm talking about it is that what Darshan did, and he's coming here in somewhere around a month, whatever the date is, you'll see. Darshan from Italy. Yeah, he's coming here to do a book launch and give a service. Yeah, great. I had no idea. You cannot write a book like this if you have to know it. You have to have had the experience. All of his blogs and he really he tackled the 8 meannesses of the heart, which are kind of akin to what Patanjali is talking about. Those things that we have to overcome. Now, the Holy Science talks about many other things, including one of the early commentaries on the yugas, so we hadn't heard about that. He talks about yoga and meditation in that book, so there's a lot in there. But the meannesses of the heart as a way to, so relieving ourselves of the 8 meannesses of the heart as the only way to uncover the natural love of the heart. And he takes you on this journey through his daily experiences, constantly bringing in quotes of all of the masters, but making them relevant so that when you leave, you have life stories. If you haven't had that story, you've had something similar enough that you go like, oh, and You know, I love that. I think storytelling and sharing personal experiences, obviously, any of you who know me know that I think it's a very nice way to teach, because people may not remember the principle, but they'll say, you know, I remember when you told that story 5 years ago. I don't even remember the end of the story, but they do. It's a very good, and he does that throughout this whole book until you feel like you've had an interpreter for the holy science. It's so beautiful. But part of what you're talking about, Stephen, becomes, it's such a theme, just that, you know, he reveals, I made this mistake, or my son was suffering in this way, or I went through this horrible experience with my family, or on and on, sharing, or beautiful things, not just difficult things, but always this peak spiritual lesson that came through it. It's deceptively simple. That's what I'll say. It's like what I always say about a Kriya breath to new Kriya bonds. This is going to look deceptively easy to you. Because you go, oh, you just breathe in and out, right? I mean, in essence. But it's not, it is simple, but it's not easy to go as deep as we all want to go with each breath. That's how his book is. And it really just shows you just stay on course as much as you can and just let God do the rest. Like actually finally get God is the doer. And it is very hard to remember. We always think that we need to work harder to get something right. That's the nature of the human condition. We always feel if we can work on it, if we can do this. Really, basically, if we would stay home and pray sincerely, we could overcome a lot. And then it's just revealed to us, like what you're saying, which I really love. And then you look back and you think, did I have anything to do with that? My love of God did. My belief, my faith. Faith, right? Yeah.
You ordered that book?
Yes, well, we're going to have it here when he comes, but you could order it from Crystal Clarity now. Soon. Sure.
Just quickly, you inspired me, Stephen, in the sense that, not to belabor the point, you've both made it, just to emphasize that you've said, you know, there's this event that finally this long-running karma, I got the opportunity to solve itself. And Stephen, you were saying basically every day I meditate effectively and this gets solved. You know? The only point I would make is I think both of us are numbers driven. And there's this one for me that, you know, I've calculated and all of it. And I'll just say this, it's been fascinating to me how I prayed once. To me, it's not, I don't wish for this karma to be solved every day through meditation. But I sincerely asked God to, you know, take care of this in a way that's however you choose. And I forgot about it. And it's the silent burning of the karma, you know. We don't realize it, but we're burning it. And then in my head, you know, the intellect one day focuses on that and says, you know what? The numbers are working out on their own. And so to me, just to put out there that I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah.
It's not something I'm intently focused on, but it's something that it sincerely did ask for. And it's working out. Now that I look back, I'm like, oh my God, this is happening.
Yeah, it really happens.
I find that fascinating.
I've often said that our path, that last line that I always preface this by telling people, I've never had a drug problem or an alcohol problem in this life, but because I've worked in the field a lot. I mean, not that it would be horrible if I did, but I didn't. It's just, I'm not saying this from the point of view of the addict, but I've worked with so many addicts and alcoholics in my life. And when they are at meetings, the very last line of the prayer that they say, the last line, it works if you work it. And they're at these AA or NA meetings, so it's a little rowdy. But it's true of our path. It's exactly, in just a very few words, it works if you work it. And if you don't, and this is something Master says so clearly in the second coming of Christ. I fell in love with that book as a part of my preparation for Easter. I didn't read the book. I mean, it's 2,000 pages of print, tiny, tiny print. But I picked out a lot of things. I read a lot of pieces of the book, and it's spectacular. And if you want to borrow it, it's just sitting in Iris. You can go in anytime, take it, borrow it for a while, but because it's huge, 2 volumes. Nobody has to buy it. But he said, don't think at all that you can fool God. There's no fooling God, because you're really only fooling yourself. But if you are sincerely working, if you actually put forth effort to meditate regularly, to pray, whatever it is, it's not about, do you meditate 3 hours every morning and an hour every night? It's not like that. That's how the human mind works. He said, you will have God right there and grace will descend, but you can't fool him, which is really just a very interesting and sobering, I might say, though, no pun intended here, but it's a sobering thought. So it's like, yeah, it actually works. I mean, when you said, I know just the energy you're putting out, it's sort of like that. Yeah, and then I noticed it was all working. So, yeah. I wanted to just read a couple of things, just interesting things that I found. Again, I don't know where this came from. I actually think this might be from the Hindu way of awakening. But Swamiji wrote, Ganesha, though he possesses a human body, has the head of an elephant. He also has a vehicle, which is surprisingly a rat. Now, I loved finding this because I always wondered why, every, what are they called? Every deity, thank you, in Hinduism has an animal, that is associated with it. And for many of you know, I kind of collect Ganeshas. I love Ganeshas. It's a remover of all obstacles in a sentence. But every Ganesha is different, and they're joyful. It just makes me feel such joy. But I don't like getting a Ganesha if his rat's not with him, because to me it feels like that completes him. Then I read this, which is surprisingly, Swamiji said, I was surprised too. You wouldn't think a rat would be with a deity. He says, there is both comedy and meaning in this ridiculous juxtaposition, for although the elephant is, of course, a symbol of wisdom, its size and strength also enable it to ram its way through the jungle, whereas the rat, because of its small size, can burrow underneath the jungle's obstacles and arrive at the same end, and perhaps just as quickly. The rat's forte lies in subtlety rather than in strength. Both might and subtlety are necessary for success in life, depending on the obstacles to be overcome. Isn't that beautiful? I just love that. And it explained to me that which I never knew, and for some reason I've never in all these years looked up. But it's so wonderful to hear, because Ganesh is huge. Even if you have a little Ganesha this big, his belly is the biggest part of the image. And there he is with his little rat. But it's such a beautiful way of saying that it can be an either or. And what he's saying is, pay attention, know when that kind of strength and fortitude is what's being asked for, and know when subtlety and even more inwardness really is what's being asked for. I think one of the mistakes that I feel I see many people make on the spiritual path is confusing the fact that power is not a bad thing. You know, we all know this, everybody here, that the third chakra represents power. It's the lesson that Krishna was teaching Arjuna. It's very important, but it's spiritual power that we want to own. It's that inward, quiet. It's the elephant side of Ganesha, that strength. And I think people feel that to be spiritual, you have to be more meek. It might just be where that whole Jesus meek and mild thing came from. Christians thought that was a good thing. Oh, he's mild. He was anything but mild and meek. I mean, anything. He was the human manifestation of power and strength. But in an interesting way, the other day I was talking with a friend who was having a little trouble because the way he's learned in the world to deal, coming out of a difficult home and then how he grew up, is with kind of brute force. And if you want to let people know, hey, don't mess with me, you get challenging and you get, I can't think of the word right now, he himself said it, but it's just sort of like you always feel like you're right next to somebody like this, and he's sort of, this is how he's dealing, particularly if you have to say anything to him that he doesn't want to hear. And I was trying to help him see the ways that was getting him into trouble with many people in many instances. And I said, the next time it happens where somebody's trying to make a point with you that you don't agree with, that's when he gets into trouble. Just say at some point, because he was saying to me, what should I do? Just say, look, we're obviously getting nowhere. I don't agree with you. You don't agree with me. Why don't we just stop? And let's call in another person or two that we respect. Let's just bring somebody else in. I actually mentioned people, but it doesn't matter here. And let's just solve it that way. Let's just get other opinions. Because, and he said, and I said, but that's not what you do. He said, no, I get threatening because I want them to know, wait a minute, I'm in charge here. And in a worldly way, he is in charge in that position. But he said to me, but wouldn't that just have me look weak and meek? That's what he said. I said, well, maybe from your old street buddies it would, but that's not how you're living now. You're deeply devoted on a spiritual path, and to your guru buys, for you to be able to say, you know, let's just stop where we are. Let's get some help here. Everybody would feel your strength. So it's really an interesting thing. What in the world looks like strength, what on the spiritual path feels like strength. What does that mean, that power in the third chakra? It doesn't mean beat people up in any way. It doesn't mean threaten people. It means tap into the power of the divine and live accordingly. It means find spiritual truth and live accordingly, which can be very off-putting to people, but that's then not our problem. If we haul off and punch somebody, that's our problem. So, you want to say something? I'm done. I'd like it if you say something.
You know, I think the point that you're speaking to, it parallels for me when we were reading those affirmations at the very beginning of class, and the subtle difference between I rise determinedly to meet each obstacle versus I rise joyfully to meet each new opportunity. What I really felt in it, in a sense, it almost to me encompasses the whole of the spiritual path, what that shift can look like. And what struck me the most was that joy is actually the most powerful tool we have in our arsenal, in our toolkit. You know, joy is far more powerful than determination, steadfastness, whatever. Not that those are bad qualities in and of themselves, but just the subtle shift of that. It's like the little mouse or rat versus, you know, the giant Ganesha, and all of what you're saying, that as we refine our spiritual attunement and our consciousness, we begin to look at power very differently. And it just really struck me so vividly that joy is the most powerful thing we have at our disposal to use. Yeah. And it overcomes all obstacles instantaneously if we can get there. You know, I've been lucky enough in my life, before I was on the path and after, if I really have to pray, if I'm really struggling with something, and often just, you know, sort of ugly crying in front of your altar about whatever it is that you're going through, what always happens for me when it's taken away is I just start laughing uncontrollably. And you know the Master's just there laughing with you, that joy has the power to illuminate or outshine, there's a better word than that, but it has the power to outshine anything else that we're experiencing.
Yeah, it's really true. Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, Lakshmi.
When Shanti was sharing, it came to me something different. It is always connected, but very different. That I remember I started to do a lot of work, inner work in myself, probably like 10, 12 years ago. And the first time I discovered what it means to be, I used to value strength and be, you know, you don't trust anybody, you trust in yourself, and you don't let anybody control anything. And then learning, and in a household where being always active was a way of being strong. You know, being lazy or being sitting down, not even lazy, being sitting down and resting was a sign of, anyway.
Weakness.
Weakness. It's very,
Is that a
yes.
good, fair word?
Yeah, so it was very hard for me just to learn how to rest, because internally it was a sign of weakness, of laziness. Mm-hmm. So I have to learn that I can rest and not be lazy. But anyway, that third chakra in the opposite power. And I remember when I discovered that what it meant to be brave, being vulnerable, surrender, being sincere with being vulnerable, that's the real strength that I had never practiced growing up. And oh my, that was amazing. What it meant to open my heart, to open my heart and be sincere and vulnerable. Like, I'm gonna say this word, it was almost like vomiting everything that was inside of me into and lying down on the altar. Like, I give all to you, with no hidden of any kind. This is who I am. These are all my mistakes. These were all my bad thoughts. These were all that I did. And wow, and make that seen as the real strength. And I think that's what this path does to you. You know, in the street, like, you know, this kind of the strength, probably nobody sees it. But here, when you start going through this path, when you give yourself to Guru, when you start learning what that means, that's the real strength, where you become naked. And
that's so beautiful. And I think, you know, as you're speaking, I'm realizing it's so beautiful what you're saying, and I think most of us can relate to it. What an incredible blessing that we were, like, what had you wake up and know that? What had any of us, how did we suddenly start seeing really what is truth in the world, as opposed to the I was going to say charade, but it's not a charade, but how most people in the world live, how they're postured, how they're costumed, it's just like this man I was speaking to the other day. No, if I'm not strong, I can't look weak in the world. But, you're not interested in the world, you're interested. But anyway, what a blessing that you just know that, and that realization comes and you act on it. It's just so beautiful. And I had another image which you were speaking that I'd like to just share. Well, first of all, let me say, this book that Darshan wrote, he's writing about how only once we uncover the natural love of the heart, it's the only way, the one and only way that we can find whatever it is we think we're looking for, anywhere, ever. So we go through these 8 meannesses. They're challenging, like part of what you're speaking to, part of what many of us are. But when you were doing this, like opening your heart, the first image that came to mind was Hanuman. Because, Hanuman literally tore his chest open. It's almost gory when you see images of it, in a way. But when you look closely, you see it's Rama in his heart, right? So he put God, he found God right in his heart, and he's just walking around showing everybody, he's a big monkey, and he's just showing, look at me, look at my heart, which you brought to mind by that wonderful sharing. But the other person who's saying that, obviously this book had a big impact on me, but he's saying just what everybody's saying, really, and I think you just said so beautifully. All of what we're looking for, all of the ways that we think we have to defend ourselves, all of the battles that we're taking on, every single obstacle that is with us, if we can just keep letting go, turning away from whatever we thought was strength before, that we thought was protective, when we were still living in a much more worldly consciousness, and clear it all out and find that purity of heart, the joy, that deep desire that you're just showing as you want to tear your heart open. Or I would say everybody who spoke, the way Stephen spoke about it, let go and let God is really, that phrase that got popularized, but it's just so true. And to be able to be in this book that is walking us, it's like somebody took your hand and it's just walking you down this path to say, this is the way. We all know it. We know we're on the right path. But, I'm just listening. Everybody's saying a lot of the same things very differently and according to their own karma. And it's so beautiful. It just adds for me anyway, I will say, the next way to look at things, the next way through when the next challenge comes. I really appreciate what's being shared. Is anybody else who, I was going to say who hasn't spoken, but even if you have, anything else to say tonight? Rita? Keep it close to your mouth.
Yeah. No, I was going to say just right after Lakshmi said about joyful, and I feel that so strongly that whenever someone is upset or somehow, if you just even, and they're sharing something with you and they're really upset, if you just start, sometimes I just start saying with a huge smile on my face, it kind of helps them just start coming down, and then say something, but not very seriously, though what I'm saying is serious, but say it in a more mild and joyful way, it seems to work.
Very good.
And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah,
just,
it's as long as we're conscious that that person can handle the smile then,
yeah,
really.
yes,
But
of course,
yeah,
I do it to people that I know
Yeah,
very
it's
well
beautiful.
and very close, and so,
You know, it's very important and very lovely, Rita. One of the experiences that I used to have when I was practicing medicine, and I've shared this out loud too before, is I would often say to people, do you want to be well? And people would look at you like you're crazy. They would say, of course, they wanted to be better, feel better. That's what they thought. But when they started getting better, it was scary. And it was so frightening that something you just said, I don't even know what Rita just rang this bell. Because maybe, the way you said that, just my thinking of, and I'm not really wanting to just talk about other people. I want to say, it's not, we're headed in the right direction and we're thinking the right way, but it's amazing how sometimes we can want to hold on to where we are. And it's subtle. And it's just something that we can say to ourselves, it's hard and it's scary to change. And typically I could say, that's ridiculous. Of course I want to be free. But it's frightening. There's some visceral level at which change or letting go, if we're not ready, it's either impossible or it's just frightening for us. So there's a compassion around some of the ways that we're stuck, really. I feel a deep compassion for myself, which is good. I mean, everyone, because, yeah, anyway. All right, well, we may need to do a third class on obstacles. When I first read that obstacle, I said to myself, oh, this is so simple. We always say, every obstacle can become an opportunity. Like there was nothing to say about it. But it's everything. It's everything. Isn't it remarkable? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all.